Good morning and welcome to Fountain Street Church. It's almost spring. I keep thinking it is anyway. Well, we're glad to have you here, those of you who made it out through the new snow, and whether you're here in person or coming to us on the YouTube feed now or later, you are very welcome here in this church where love and belonging are so important. Welcome.
Good morning. It is good to be with you. I am Reverend Christopher, and I am so honored to welcome you into this time of worship with our invitation to worship, which comes to us from Sophia Lyon Fahs. Hear these words as they call each of us into the heart of worship this morning. We gather in reverence before the wonder of life, the wonder of this moment we share, the wonder of being together, so close and yet still apart. Each hidden in our own secret chamber, each listening, each trying to speak, yet none fully understanding, and none fully understood. We gather in reverence before all intangible things that eyes see not, nor ears can detect, that hands can never touch, that space can never hold, and time can surely not measure. Welcome into that space. Welcome to worship. Friends, you are invited to join us in a responsive reading, and it is found in your gray hymnal that is in the pew in front of you. And it is reading number 503. Towards the back, the readings are numbered multiple on a page. 503. I will be reading the regular text, and you will be responding in the italicized, and Chaplain Margi Peterson will be joining you. Join us in this responsive reading as we enter into worship. Bless Adonai, who spins day into dusk.
With wisdom, watch the dawn gates open.
With understanding, let time and seasons come and go.
With awe, perceive the stars in lawful orbit.
Morning dawns, evening darkens.
Darkness and light yielding one to the other.
Yet each distinguished and unique.
Marvel at life. Strive to know its ways.
Seek wisdom and truth, the gateways to life's mysteries.
Wondrous indeed is the evening twilight.
Friends, I invite you to turn to one another and greet one another in the peace of love. You will be called back with our gathering hymn. The ancient witness to us comes from Beyond Words by Lao Tzu. Hear what the ancient spirit is saying to our contemporary souls this morning. Existence is beyond the power of words to define. Terms may be used, but none of them are absolute. In the beginning of heaven and earth, there were no words. Words come out of the womb of matter. And whether we dispassionately see to the core of life or passionately see the surface, the core and the surface are essentially the same. Words see them differently, only to express appearance. If name be needed, wonder names them both. From wonder into wonder, existence opens. Our contemporary reading this morning comes to us from the spiritual teacher and poet Mark Nepo. Hear what the Spirit of love in our time is saying to this gathered community. My father's spirit left his body when he died and joined the sea of life and light, no longer contained or nameable. And yet, once home in my study, my first sense of him without a body came in the pour of morning light through the high, thick branches of the oak beside our house. Somehow, the essence of my father poured through the leaves and branches that hover over my study until, like water filling a hole, the nameless sea of light filled the hole in my heart, until a sense of him flooded my one window, making me stop, feeling bathed in the part of him that had no words. Beyond the trees and the living forms on earth, my father remains indistinguishable from all the other particles of light. But the mystery of the heart's unending gravity is that, as certain flowers join and draw certain insects to pollinate them, our grieving hearts open like those flowers to draw the particles of spirit we love to us. It's what the universal moves through and makes it personal, the way the river over stone makes water sing.
tall. I have a little step back here. We're all dying to live, aren't we? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? And if we're not, if we're okay with dying, then we must be depressed or have something else wrong with us. Life, after all, is it. It's all there is. It's all we have. Even those who believe in some sort of pleasant afterlife behave as though we must continue living in these bodies at all costs. I've been reading about and studying this question for a long time. I've been curious about it since I was a child, and a great deal more lately. During my time in chaplain training at Bronson Hospital, I saw many people struggling with letting someone go who was not going to continue living. Some did it sadly and still gracefully. Others battled the news, battled the disease or injury, battled people who told them that death was inevitable. The idea that there was no hope of continuing in this world was anathema to them. Unbelievable. There must be something we can do. Our healthcare system perpetuates this idea that there's always something more that can be done. Another procedure, another drug. Why? Why is death such a boogeyman to be evaded and avoided at all costs? Very high costs. One answer came to me the other day from a friend who had been raised in a Lutheran church where the minister paced up and down in front of the pews, warning in a loud voice about the dangers of hell. This kind of fear-invoking rhetoric creates a sort of religious PTSD where the victims forever after avoid thinking about death or what might come after. And though this person has been a part of the Fountain Street Church community for many years and holds a very different concept of God, the emotional scars persist. Another answer from childhood might be the death of a pet and how that's handled by parents. Someone else I know had a dog that escaped and was hit by a passing car. She swore she would never have another pet. Losing this one was too painful. She did not ever want to repeat that experience. Others of us know full well that unless we are quite advanced in age when we adopt, we will most likely outlive our furry companions. Yet we continue to bond with these creatures and see them through their lives and deaths with love because of the gifts these relationships bring. The gifts that our relationships bring. Stephen Jenkinson, a writer, lecturer, and teacher, whose short film Grief Walker will be shown after the service in the chapel on March 19, talks about how, beyond the incredible monetary cost of prolonging a life with a known end, is the cost to the patient and to family of increasing the amount of time the person spends in pain and in the certain knowledge that death is at the door. He says in his book, Die Wise, our superb lifespan is purchased in part by extending old people's lives far beyond what their illness or their disease would have allowed, while still not entirely ridding them of that disease or illness. We should add a fourth record to the string of our achievements. I suspect that we also die the longest. We are not allowed to die on schedule. Often we do, but it isn't encouraged. Our idea of what dying on schedule is like has been so skewed by the med tech competence in distorting that schedule, funhouse mirror style, that natural death is mostly a matter of opinion and personal style instead of a matter of dying. What Jenkinson is saying is that even when death is inevitable, we prolong life. In our medical system, if it can be done, it should be done to extend life. At the same time, while many who have been in the death business, as Jenkinson calls it, for years, believe that life at all costs must prevail, there are many in the healthcare business, as well as the business of dying, those in palliative care, hospice care, and the like, who do not agree. These people, for the most part, try to help those at the end of life to achieve what they wish. Nevertheless, when one is hospitalized, it is difficult to negotiate a peaceful death with dignity. Many doctors are not trained in the conversational skills required to present news of imminent death to a patient and family. And even within the realms of palliative and hospice care, one must be conscious of how and whether the patient's choices are being honored. Would you want to know if you had a terminal diagnosis? Many would say no. And others would say not to tell someone they love. Most people would think it ill-advised to tell a child that they are dying. A husband might tell a doctor not to reveal to his wife that she has a terminal illness. What does this do to us when we don't talk about what's happening? Why not tell someone? I think the answer is pretty simple. Talking about it makes it real. We all know we are going to die, and at the same time, if we don't talk about it, it's something that will happen at some point in the far distant future. Someone said to me recently that a 96-year-old friend wanted to talk about death, but she thought it was better to talk about nice things, upbeat things, friendly, comfortable things. I suggested that perhaps death was precisely what this 96-year-old needed to talk about, and that it might be a conversation that would support both of them going forward. I don't know if the person took me up on my suggestion. I hope she did. When someone wants to talk about death, whether it's upon them or not yet visible, what an opportunity for us to learn about the person's thoughts, concerns, and plans for the end of life, and their thoughts about the life they have and continue to live. Michael Hebb, author of Let's Talk About Death Over Dinner, acknowledges that this isn't the easiest thing to bring up. He has lots of ideas about questions to ask, though, that don't sound so threatening. Hebb tells of an octogenarian watching Million Dollar Baby and revealing to his friend, "If I were in that position, I'd want someone to do that for me." To him, this did not count as talking about death, and yet, of course, he was. Hebb goes on, "While art can serve as an effective entry, so can questions that are more abstract, like, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your grandchildren to tell their grandchildren about you? What would your epitaph be?" Answer the questions yourself as well. When you open up and show your own vulnerability and willingness to talk, you open up their door too. You might say something like, I was thinking about how Grandma Mary was always so welcoming and hospitable. Anyone could stay with her whenever they wanted. I've tried to be like that because it's important. I want my grandkids to remember me that way. Then leave it be. If they don't respond with their own desires, that doesn't mean they're not thinking about it. Give them time. You are planting seeds. Hebb deeply encourages children to talk to their parents, whatever their age, about what they hope for in the dying process and what will happen afterward: burial, cremation, being planted, and what kind of service or celebration of their life they envision. Sometimes these conversations can heal wounds and open doors of communication that have been long closed. Simply showing interest in something so personal and important lets the person know that they are important to you. You may think I'm only talking about older adults when Heb and I make the recommendation that you have this conversation. We're not. It's never too soon to have a conversation. Of course, most young children aren't likely to ask their parents about their dying wishes, but if they do, please respond seriously. Same goes for any questions children ask about death. Don't dismiss them. Just like talking about sex, ask a few questions yourself and figure out what their level of curiosity is. Then respond at that level. No need to give a lot of additional information that hasn't been asked for, but responding in kind is essential if you don't wish to further perpetuate the fear of death and of talking about it. On a personal note, while I wish to honor anyone's wishes regarding their celebration of life, I might argue, at least a little, with those who say, "Don't do anything. I don't want a ceremony or a party, just lay my body or spread my ashes, that's it." I've even heard people say, "Just throw me in the trash, I'm done with my body." A celebration of life can be large or small, elaborate or simple, short or long. In most cases, it's a crucial part of continuing to live with the loss of an important person in one's life. Adult children can initiate this conversation with their parents. They can also initiate it with their spouses and friends. Let's talk about death over dinner is an opportunity to open people up to their own and others' ideas about death. At our Let's Talk About Death potluck on Tuesday, March 21, 3 groups of 8 will have a chance to enjoy exceptional conversation about this important topic. If you're still sitting there thinking, "What the heck is this all about? I don't want to talk about death. I don't even want to think about death," let me paint you a picture. You're living in the same town with your father. You see him often. He is in his late 80s and getting along pretty well. You know that he sees that his years are limited, but neither of you has ever tried to discuss what will happen when he dies. Then he dies. It's unexpected, and you are grief-stricken. Along with that, you have no idea whether he wants to be buried or cremated or something else, where he would like to rest, how he wants to be memorialized. Your grief is compounded by your uncertainty about what choices you must make in his name. Here's another. Rather than dying suddenly, your father becomes ill, and despite having a do not resuscitate order on his medical chart, he ends up going back and forth to the hospital for various procedures. He is also put on numerous medications to keep him alive, medications that make him short of breath and severely limit his quality of life. Instead of taking this opportunity to clarify with him just what he would like to do going forward, you fall into the sway of the healthcare system, encouraging the next test, the next procedure to prolong his life. When he finally does succumb to his illness, you are left wondering whether his time could have been spent more enjoyably seeing loved ones and having a chance to say goodbye in the comfort of his own apartment rather than in a hospital setting. Or you know your father's wishes. At his fairly advanced age, he has made the choice not to be resuscitated, and you, as his health advocate, can clearly support that choice. When the retirement home where he lives finds him unresponsive and calls an ambulance, you rush to the hospital to make sure that the do not resuscitate order is followed. Of course you don't want him to die. He's your father. You love him, and he has an important place in your life. Yet the two of you have talked about this, and you know that he doesn't want to have CPR performed on him, nor does he want to be on a ventilator. He wants to let go of that which has kept him tethered to this life. And you want to honor that. In spite of the fact that the ambulance personnel have been bagging him, when you reach the hospital, you inform the ER staff that his wish is to be allowed to die. You may have to be somewhat forceful about this. Not all hospital staff are willing to do nothing. Doing nothing is not in the job description. But they listen. They stop all the things they are doing. Your dad dies, and you are with him, and you know this is what he wanted. And having had the tough conversation, you also know what to do next, whom to contact, and how to go forward. During this time of grief, knowing what steps to take makes everything so much easier. Hopefully you have siblings or other family members who are also aware of your dad's choices and who can support you. But even if you run into resistance, you know that you did the right thing. You know because he told you. An even better scenario is one where the retirement home knows of the DNR order and respects it, allowing him to die in his room without all the fireworks and fanfare of calling an ambulance. When my dad was in his mid-80s, he was at a Golden K meeting, the Kiwanis retired guys and some of their regular members, in a church basement. When the presentation was over, the abler guys were helping the less so get to their rides. Dad appeared to be asleep. After most of the others had cleared out, someone tried to wake him. He wasn't waking, so they called an ambulance. By the time my mom got there to pick him up, he was being wheeled out to an ambulance. Later, I said, maybe you should tell the Golden K guys, if that happens again, to just hold his hand and tell him he's loved till you get there and can decide what to do. She said, I couldn't do that to them. That's the issue, isn't it? She couldn't tell them to let him die. She couldn't ask them to be responsible for that, even though most of them were at the same age with the same kinds of issues and concerns. I imagine myself in the situation of the other Golden K members finding a fellow Kiwanian unresponsive at the end of a meeting. I think I would want to know what his wishes were. I would want at least to talk to his wife before calling an ambulance, especially knowing that she would be there soon. But life, continuing to live, wins out as our default choice. Keep him alive. Several years later, after a 9-year diagnosis of Alzheimer's, Dad had a weird spot on his face. Mom took him to the doctor, who said that it looked like there might be some cancer in there. Did she want to look further? No. A few months passed, and the spot had become a sore that wouldn't heal. We took him to the wound clinic, where the PA told us it was a malignant melanoma. She could do this test or this treatment. We said no. We didn't need to have a more specific idea of what was happening inside his body. This cancer had been there for at least a few months. He was 91 years old. We called hospice, and they came to his room and kept him comfortable. He got to see his kids and some of his grandkids. He had lovely conversations and lots of hugs. He didn't know what was happening, but not because he wasn't told. He just didn't remember. He did, however, love the attention, appreciate everyone who visited, and smile a lot. The Wednesday before he died, he was unresponsive. Then, Thursday, when my brother arrived from North Carolina, he woke up, recognized him, talked with him, and told him he loved him. The next day, he was unresponsive again, and he died on Saturday. What a gift for all of us that we weren't trying to keep him alive and that we weren't struggling with his death. Emotionally, our relationships with him were resolved, and letting him go lost the edge it might have had we not been clear about his wishes. In the Jewish community, there are very specific rules for how death is handled. Firstly, the body is to be buried as soon as possible. Rabbi Sharon Bruce explains, there is a forceful immediacy to that experience. It gives people something to do when you have no idea what to do right now. Everything you knew to be true is gone. And instead of throwing your hands up and saying, I don't know what to do, the tradition says, here's what you do. Jewish tradition goes on with other specified rituals like sitting Shiva and all its necessary elements, and the family covering the coffin with earth. From Let's Talk About Death, quote, "On the last of the 7 days, Shiva, you get up with whoever is there and you walk around the block. You can be silent or you can sing. As Sharon explained it, it's a way of saying your loved one died, but you're still alive. And there is more, like rituals a year later and several years beyond. The rest of us may not have all these prescriptions and traditions to guide us. If we have talked with our loved ones, though, we do know what needs to be done. And that provides, as Rabbi Bruce says, a container for our grief, one that helps us get through the immediacy of the event of death. For death, whether sudden or prolonged, whether of someone intimate or more distant, whether of someone under 10 or over 90, makes a hole in our lives. Even the death of a treasured musical icon or movie star brings us up short. It's a loss. The fabric of our world has changed. This, then, I wish for you all, expressions of love and resolution of enmities, conversations about death, theirs and yours, and the blessing of experiencing life departing like a hiccup in the universe. One moment there, and the next moment, yet still feeling the connection that continues.
Before our offering, we have a lot of announcements today, and so we've moved them a little bit. And we'll also have a special announcement from Paul Arnold from Stewardship. But first, our usual invitation for each and every one of you to join us in the social hall after this service, not only because we welcome and cherish spending time with you and one another, but also because we have several tables that are set up. You'll notice that it's set up almost like a fair or a ministry fair, and included in those tables are representatives from Hospice of Michigan, Gilda's Club, and the Threshold Choir, as well as tables with all kinds of information and materials from Faith, Hospice Grief Center, and the Mortals Death Cafe. This is a wonderful way to continue what Chaplain Margi Peterson just lifted up for us and make it tangible, or to walk away with a few more pieces of information you can take home and digest and metabolize at home. So please join us in the social hall for that time with one another and to see those resources. At 1 p.m. in the chapel, we have our social justice film series and today's film is called Fruitvale Station. It's at 1 p.m. right in our beautiful chapel. You can go there. There's popcorn and a wonderful film put on by the social justice team and the art committee. So please consider joining us for that special part of this series we've been lifting up. Next week after the service, we will have the film Grief Walker at 1 p.m. in the chapel. And that is another way to continue with this special series that Chaplain Margi Peterson is doing with us. And so I hope you can make it for that very interesting and enlightening opportunity in that film. And of course, let's talk about death, which is another opportunity that Margi lifted up for all of us. That is the dinner that'll be happening in the social hall, I believe. And so you are invited to reach out to either Margi Peterson or Meredith, because either one of them will be able to help you get signed up for that. As well, I just wanted to lift up to all of you that often we don't realize all the wonderful dynamic things that are happening for our children and youth. And we just came out of a full weekend of sex education for our middle and high schoolers. We had an overnight that was going on Friday night, and we had many volunteers and some of our own staff that were here to help not only chaperone that process, but be a part of this dynamic, evidence, and research-based sex education program. That's a huge part of our striving for reproductive justice, is offering that kind of education in West Michigan where you can't always get it elsewhere. And so between that and the Planned Parenthood program that is going on Sundays, again, many of you probably wouldn't see that. It's a full classroom in 109 put on by Fountain Street and Planned Parenthood. I just want to lift up some things, that there are some wonderful things that still happen that I believe in the bottom of my heart only Fountain Street can be a part of solving those issues in this region that we live in. Also, you will see this week something hitting your mailbox on Wednesday, and it will go through Easter. It's just going to be a weekly Lenten communication. As you can tell, I've got a lot of announcements here, and it's a lot to remember. And so on Wednesdays, like I did in Advent, I will have some Lenten invitations. We are going to have a very packed back half of Lent with special services and gatherings and opportunities to connect and learning colloquiums. And so I do want you to know that those are all coming. So those will be on Wednesdays. And if it's too much information for you every Wednesday, you can just mark red and not even open it. I understand. But I know many of you appreciate those. And so I believe Paul Arnold is with us. He's right behind me. Paul.
Hello. My name is Paul Arnold, and I'm here representing the Stewardship Committee. So guess what I'm going to be talking about? Two things on my agenda. One is we are getting close, but we're still short on our budget for this year in terms of collecting pledges and donations of record. We're about 90% there. We still need about $45,000. So I'd like to encourage you, if you haven't already, and the vast majority of you have already done so, to fill out a pledge form. I've left the forms on the front table there. Do want to suggest there's two different ways of pledging. One would be to fill out a pledge form, and that just is a promise that over the year you're going to donate so much at a certain period of time. Or the other way is to fill out a form and have it automatically deducted from your banking or credit card. It's an easy way of doing it. So that's all I'm going to say about pledging. The other thing is a lot more fun, and that is the secret goods and services auction is starting to happen. We've done it for the last several years. It's been a nice little money maker for the church, and most importantly, it's a lot of fun to participate in. We're calling it a goods and services auction, in that the goods are antiques, jewelry, works of art that are of value. You simply, take a snapshot of it, go online or fill out the form. Again, these forms are in the table in the narthex. If you want to grab a blank form, rather have you do it online. It makes it easier for me not to have to retype everything. So the goods are, like I say, antiques or jewelry. Take a picture, fill out the form, send it to the church, and we'll put it up on the website. The other is services, and these can be a lot of fun. You can offer to teach somebody how to dance. You could offer to show somebody how to weld. You could offer a nature walk, gardening help, dog sitting, lots of different things that people have businesses that they'd like to promote. They might offer as a sample. So we have all kinds of things for that. I can give you some examples of what has already been donated this year. We have an auto harp, some stained glass, cutting board, a couple of vacation homes, one in Florida and one up in Rockford, 2 hours of grief counseling, some welded metal art, some photography. We have artwork itself by Adrian Sweats and another one by Sylvia Krisoff, and VIP treatment at a Cabello concert. I don't know who Cabello is, but some porcelain vases and some jewelry. So lots of good things. I will start to put all these things up on the website this week. I haven't done it yet, but as soon as after today, I'll get to work in getting all these things up there. But I would like to encourage you, there's one other item in there that I would love to have more of, and that is offering a dinner party or a pool party or, take somebody out to lunch or breakfast sort of thing, because that also, in terms of helps the church to earn money, but it also helps to get people to know each other. So those are my 2 agenda items, and like I say, the forms are back on the table, and I would love it if everybody would participate, and thank you for the people that have already donated, and the people that haven't donated, start to think about what items that you might want to donate to the auction. Thank you very much.
Friends, as we continue through this worship service with one another, we move into the time where we collect the weekly gifts. And we always remind you that this is one of the ways in which we embody love, in which we practice love, because 50% of those gifts go directly beyond the walls of this church, and the other 50% stay here to keep these ministries alive and thriving. Wow. Alive, and I'm doing too many hats today. Alive and thriving. And often when we talk about death, we also talk about the ways in which we live in the eternal and the ways in which our soul and our spirit and our generosity becomes part of the collective whole. And the gifts of the offering every week are one such way in which we also embody that presence among us, in which our gifts move into spaces and places we could never imagine because of the generosity and stewardship of the organizations we share them with. And so it's in the spirit of generosity and eternity and the infinite potential that we will now collect the offering.
take a moment to pause. We pause and reflect on our lives, our powerful, forgettable, meaningful, tiny lives. We allow ourselves to be touched by relationship, that which gives us meaning, and community, that which gives us belonging. And we reflect on the ordinary enormity of our lives and our deaths, the common reality we all must face, and how we wish to do just that. We reach out to one another, and we reach inward as well for support, for guidance, and for a sense of our value extending into time and space. Please take a few moments with your own thoughts and prayers. Blessed be. As we part company today, may we hear the voices of our supportive community over our personal doubts. May we feel the hugs and touches that assure us of our worth and value, and may we give the same to the rest of the world. Blessed be.